I'm Jerry Agar, in for Ezra Levant. We continue to look into the possibility of the legalization of marijuana as the Sun newspapers run a series on the topic. Kash Heed is the former Vancouver police chief and Solicitor General, now a Liberal MLA. Kash, welcome.
My pleasure.
You know, I get the feeling here that regardless of how this debate goes, we're sort of slowly, inevitably heading to legalization. You think that's true?
Absolutely. The momentum has picked up over the last little while, especially as a result of what happened in Colorado and Washington and the other discussions that are taking place in North America.
Well, Colorado and Washington, I think, also are important from the standpoint that, as we've been discussing this week, we have agreements with the United States. I mean, the U.S. didn't want to see Canada become sort of the pot market next door. Is that something that the federal governments are discussing or need to discuss?
Well, they need to discuss that. I'm sure that the U.S. federal government will allow Washington and Colorado to do what the voters have said they want done, and that's to regulate the marijuana industry within their particular states. I don't think they're going to obstruct that. If you look at the United States, their approach to marijuana is a lot more contemporary than Canada is. When you look at, you've got 18 states that have medicinal marijuana regulations on the books, and you have 14 states that have actually decriminalized marijuana. Now you have 2 that are going to move forward on regulation. I think there's others that will move forward on it in the coming years.
Justin Trudeau, many people think, will be the next Liberal Party leader. He's made comments on this recently. What did you think?
Well, decriminalization is only one aspect of what we need to do as a result of marijuana prohibition. The problem with decriminalization is that you still leave the illegal industry in the hands of organized crime groups, and they're the ones that are benefiting from the fact that we have marijuana being prohibited in Canada, and we have such a large demand for it within our own borders, that in fact they're making a tremendous amount of illicit profits as a result of that. And if we only decriminalize it, they will continue to be involved here in British Columbia in this deadly public warfare that is taking place, and they'll continue to make loads of money that we could be making on, for taxing this particular product, because the consumption levels are quite significant here in Canada. And when you look at the fact that we have 28 or 30% of the population in Canada that actually tried marijuana, and in British Columbia right now we have 11% of the population that use marijuana regularly. And if you look at the recent polling, and I was looking at one that just came out this week, the majority of Canadians want us to do something different with marijuana prohibition. And if I look at some of the local polling here in British Columbia, it was beyond just decriminalization. It was going to that full regulation, utilizing the tax dollars that can be made from the sale and distribution of marijuana, and earmarking those dollars into programs that are so sadly needed here in Canada, those social programs, those health programs, those educational programs that we need money for.
Well, that all sounds nice, although the government will set up a great big bureaucracy to handle marijuana and use up a lot of the money just in that, I think, because that tends to be how government operates. But also, when you talk about tax, I have a suspicion that what might happen, especially initially in the marketplace, is that the government will heavily tax the product and they won't have the good stuff. So maybe the criminals will still be able to be in the marketplace.
Well, I think the minute you actually go to some regulation and legalization of marijuana, you will take the black market away from the criminals, and you'll have more control over that particular product. Right now, with the criminals controlling it, we have no idea what's in the marijuana that is being sold to our youth right now. At least if we bring in some regulatory framework, some governance around that, we'll be able to control what's in the marijuana that's being sold, similar to what we do with alcohol and tobacco.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute, you just said sold to our youth. You think the government is going to sell pot to the youth?
Well, let me tell you what's going on. Our youth have easier access to marijuana than they do alcohol and tobacco right now. Absolutely not. They shouldn't be. But those particular individuals in society have easy access to marijuana right now. It will never be all right for our youth to use marijuana. Matter of fact, we need to invest in prevention programs to stop our youth from ever using any of the illicit drugs or some of the legal drugs such as alcohol and tobacco to the extent where it's going to be harmful to them. But we need money in order to do that. We need prevention as a priority. What we're dealing with right now as far as marijuana, and the mainstay is the enforcement part of it, which has been proven to be a failure once again. And if these politicians are not being hypocrites and listening to their constituents are telling them we need something else done as far as marijuana prohibition goes in Canada. So I'm realistically looking at the situation from a pragmatic point of view, and I'm saying let's regulate, let's tax marijuana, and it'll never be all right for our youth to have access to marijuana or something else.
All right.
We already have the regulatory framework in place because, as you mentioned, we have the bureaucracy that's been built around liquor right now, and that's the same bureaucracy I would want to use in order to regulate marijuana.
All right, then one more thing. If we legalize marijuana, you legalize a drug and make it socially okay, you're going to get more of it. And I've talked to professionals who say we're going to have a problem out in traffic and we don't have the same way to test as we do with alcohol.
Well, right now, as far as the marijuana or the drug impaired legislation goes and the drug driving policies that go in place, it's harder to prove that they're driving a vehicle, operating a vehicle while they're under the influence of drug, because you have to call a police officer that's specially trained in it. If you look at the technology that's out there right now and what Washington State is actually proposing when they regulate marijuana, that it'll be illegal for anyone to drive with over 5 nanograms of THC within their system. A very, very strict regulation, and that's something we have to look at here in Canada. The technology will be there, Jerry. The technology for detecting alcohol was not there many years ago. It is now. Matter of fact, you don't do those sobriety tests on the road right now. You bring out an instrument and get someone to blow into it if you have reasonable grounds to believe they're impaired.
All right. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
My pleasure, Jerry.